Hi guys. So we are starting to talk about Europeans colonizing the lands that make up what is now the United States, but we will call these the Americas. So for the purposes of social studies class, we call these the 13 original English colonies in the Americas. All right. So our key questions today before we start on an assignment that we're going to finish and present to each other on Thursday. We're going to think about why did the English colonize the Americas? And it was for religious reasons, empire expansion, and striking it rich. I will dive into those into more detail in a second. What went right and what went wrong? And then who colonized the Americas? Of the major colonizing powers, we're thinking of Spain, France, and England. I want you to think of who was the type of person that would have left Europe to colonize, to establish a new colony in the land that make up the Americas. So to start with, I have this video that I want to play for you. And it starts with Columbus's initial voyage to what he names Hispaniola in 1492. And I'm going to pause a couple times to ask you to think about what we're seeing. Present. Okay, it's really ominous music. But if we start, we see that Spain is in yellow, Portugal is represented by green. Mid-16th century here. Notice where the yellow is. Just take a look where yellow, represented by Spain, starts to establish their colonies. Now we see new players enter into the colonizing game. We see England represented by red. France is represented by blue. We have the Netherlands represented by orange. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second right here. And let's chat in class really fast about what patterns we're noticing. Where are these European colonizers colonizing? Think about where's Ohio too? Who's colonizing the land that makes up Ohio today? And wow, big shift just happened. I hope you noticed that. That Great Britain, they win the land that was previously held by France. And we also see Great Britain specifically, or England, starting to expand across the Americas. For reference, this is around when Kunta is born. Kunta from Roots. He's born around this time. So this is kind of where we are in Roots right now. And I am going to pause it there. These videos are really fun to watch. This YouTube channel is kind of cool because it shows it. They talk about the shifting control of lands throughout human history, antiquity, and through human history. Now, I also want you to remember, guys, we've talked about this in class. Was this land just empty? No one was living there. Did the Europeans encounter just vast empty lands? No, of course not. There were indigenous people living there, and indigenous people play a big role in the Europeans' success or failure in their American colonies. So who was the type of person, and why would a European person choose to leave their home in Europe and try to make a go of it and colonize the lands in the Americas? It has a lot to do with religious reasons. First, I'm going to talk about religious reasons to begin with. At the time, guys, if we think back to 7th grade social studies and we think of the end, I know you ended the year COVID style, so maybe you didn't get into this, but where we are in English history, in the history of British history, we need to talk about this guy right here. This is King Henry VIII of England, and he's King of England from 1509 until he dies in 1547. And these, you may have heard mostly about his wives. He's married 6 times throughout his life. Yes, you heard me right. Six times. And the order is in the reverse order of how they are shown on Google. So his first wife is a Spanish princess. Her name is Catherine of Aragon. I believe that she's the daughter of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Yes, she is. She's the daughter of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. That we just did our trial, who were featured in our trial. Anyway, she's Catholic, he's Catholic, everything's great. We know, we've learned about Catholicism in 7th grade. However, Henry, this woman, Anne Boleyn, she strikes his fancy, and and Catherine of Aragon has not produced a son for Henry VIII, which is really the thing he wants more than anything in life is a male heir to his throne. So he's hoping that if he remarries, he can have this boy baby to inherit the throne of England. So he goes to the Pope and he says, I'm going to divorce my wife so that I can marry a new younger wife and hopefully have a male son. And the Pope's like, no, you can't do that. I'm sorry, that's not cool with us. And Henry's like, okay, cool. Then if you won't let me divorce my first wife, then I'll just establish my own religion and I will appoint myself to be the head of the church, which is exactly what he does. This is how we get what's called the Anglican Church or the Church of England. Now, everything is not just great sunshine and roses in England after this, literally roses. But there's a big conflict between the Catholic Church and what the will of Henry VIII. And this lasts for many years, decades, centuries. There's conflicts in Europe, all throughout Europe, between Catholics and what we call Protestants. The Church of England is like one sect of Protestantism, but there's a lot of conflicts between Protestants. Two Protestant groups that we're going to learn about in 8th grade or that are relevant to us when we're talking about the formation of what becomes later the United States are, the Quakers, like of Quaker Steak and Lube, that restaurant, and of Quaker Oats, that's the same who we're talking about, the Quakers and the Puritans. And you may remember the Puritans from, if you know anything about the Mayflower story, or those guys who, men and women who wear those hats with the big buckles. They didn't actually wear those hats, but we know that from cartoons. And these are two religious groups that are ready to leave England because they are feeling so persecuted by the religious movements that are happening in England and Britain and the lack of support they're getting. So they're like, well, maybe we'll try and establish this new colony in the Americas. So that's one motivating factor for them. Then we have just empire expansion. We have talked about the big three: France, Spain, England, all competing with each other for influence in the Americas. Because we know there's a lot of money to be made from the crops that can be grown in the Americas, namely cotton and tobacco, and you can strike it rich. If we think about what type of person might have, hopped on a ship to try and make a go of it in the Americas, it probably would have been either a person who really, really cared about their religious values and needed a place to practice their religion freely, or it would have been a person who didn't have a lot of options in life. We remember from 7th grade, serfdom, the life of a peasant in Europe. It's not a great life. You don't have a lot of options. You don't have a lot of freedoms. You don't have a chance in life to move from being an impoverished, poor person to someone who can have a lot of money, have a lot of land, have a big family. So you might take a gamble on taking that trip and trying to colonize or set up a colony in the Americas. Now, I want you to think really fast for me. If you were thrown on a ship tomorrow, and if you were forced to colonize land on the moon, or forced to figure out how to farm the land so that you could feed yourself, do you think you could do it? Maybe you could, maybe you couldn't, but a lot of people struggled with this. So, forming positive relationships with indigenous people who knew how to farm the land was pretty important. Okay, I have talked a little bit. I'm going to pause here to show you a video from John Green about kind of a little more into detail about what type of person would have colonized the Americas. Give myself a little pause. Okay, let's talk about your assignment. So what you're going to do, I just want you to do some quick and fast facts for one of the original 13 colonies. We'll assign them in a little draft in a minute. What you're going to do is, if I assign you, for instance, I'm going to say, let's say South Carolina. I want you to tell me a little bit about what was the governance that South Carolinians started their colony. What was important to them in terms of government. If you need a refresher on what that word means, I have embedded that link into the slide. Our textbook, our 8th grade social studies textbook, you just click on this book and it takes you to a link. I am not asking you to read this whole thing, but what I am asking you to do is kind of scroll down until you find the colony that we assigned each other. And you're going to tell me a little bit. I do want you to read this whole passage for your colony, but I want you to kind of sum up this information for your classmates to present in a roundtable kind of discussion that we're going to have, hopefully outside on Thursday. So tell me, who were the leading founders of that colony? What was the economy like? What was it based on? What was the guiding religion that maybe that was important to that colony? I'll tell you, like, Pennsylvania is established for a very different reason than Maryland is. Settlers, who were the prominent settlers of that area, and then why did they settle that? Why did they try to settle that land for that colony for their European crown or religious group? And then what's the geography and climate like? Again, I am not looking for paragraphs here. I'm looking for fast facts that you can talk to your classmates about. I want you to think about it like, how would I teach a classmate about why this colony was established? Then I want you to just insert a picture that you would associate with that information. So, for instance, if I'm talking about the religious foundations of the Pennsylvania colony, maybe I want to show a Quaker meeting house so that my classmates know where did Quakers practice their faith, and it looks kind of different than the churches we sometimes think about. All right, I think that's it. All right, I will talk to you in class. If I can figure out how to stop.